We are Econet, an investigatory community, and we've all got questions, and so today, and we're investigating them. So today we'll start with a presentation by Andrej Bugajev for about 10 minutes, and then we'll discuss that. And then with Jere Northrop, we'll give a presentation. We'll discuss that. Hopefully, Steph Macurdy will join us, and we'll discuss his. And what I'm looking for is shared reality. So I deeply appreciate our personal intuition. I think that's a great treasure. But the question is, how can that become meaningful for all of us? You know, how can we translate personal intuition into some kind of shared language? That's the challenge. And so Montijn van Loo is joining us on the meta level, trying to see how everything relates. So we're excited. So Andrej, please, I invite you.
Okay, I'm going to share the screen, I guess. Let me find it. Yes. Well, I will try to be short because, in my opinion, it is better to scratch it as a first iteration. Yes, all these processes, investigation, are iterative processes, and in general, there were many iterations made already, because such type of investigation is not an investigation. I'm trying to understand if you see the right screen, the architecture of inner harmony. Yes.
Oh, we see your desktop. I mean your files.
It is wrong. Let me check it. This one is correct.
Now
Okay.
we see it. Yeah.
So we don't start such type of investigation just from some point. We actually do it for the whole life. And you can collect this data and insights just because you selected to do so. Yeah, so from the bottom to the top, it was collected already, but what I see here is a good opportunity to actually put everything and try to systemize this information. So, and I'm trying to put it in some kind of framework. And this word framework maybe will mean a little different thing than Andrius usually mean when he provides some objects that are related together and combined to some structure, and they're compatible between. Yes, but here I will be more close to that informatics or science, computer science framework approach, when we have some methods, or not methods, but ways, approaches to actually make something functional out of it. So I'm trying just to put in that perspective all this information and all hows, just to put some projections of it to apply actually. Yes, to try to move forward, to systemize all these insights, information that was collected for the whole life, maybe rethink something, and so on. Here I present just my personal deepest values, but it is like a baseline of everything to appear. Yes. So as and Andrius already introduced this, and I wrote some in a letter this. So the love for oneself, but that love is not something what we call egoistic things. Yes, it's inner harmony, not betrayal of yourself, and so on and so forth. And here is the simplified and probably not correct way to see to this triad, but as a starting point is not bad. we can see identity as an anchor. It's like a starting point, but maybe it is not fully correct. So first you should determine who are you? Maybe, yes. Then you achieve the meaning or view the meaning. And as we discussed with Andres, maybe compass is not fully correct here, but intuitively it is very compatible because you choose the direction, you orient in the world, and you understand which is direction attracts you. Yes, so you move that way. And the way you move, so it is very simplified way to achieve harmony with yourself, and I believe it is not fully correct, but in many cases, as a method or just as a first iteration systemizing thing, it should work. But I believe, and we discussed it with Andrews, that probably you can't analyze every aspect exclusively. In order to understand who you are, you can't answer just who you are without thinking about what is your meaning and how it is the correct way to live. And the meaning is tied to identity in the right way as well. So they're highly interconnected. It's like projecting three-dimensional structure into two dimensions. We do that. Medics do that when they scan your brain. Yes, they see some slices and so on and so on. But they always want to see that 3D in 3D space. So perhaps if you want to see something, you must watch to it in 3 dimensions. So that tight coupling is what I wanted to talk about. So um, you should analyze them together, and only then you can answer for each of them individually to define who are you, what is the meaning of the life, and what is the correct or the right way to live. So.
Thank you, Andre. Montijn had a question. Is this triad the method to love oneself? And you kind of wrote that your deepest value is the harmony of these things. So how is that related, loving oneself and this
Yeah,
harmony between this in this triad?
yeah, you see, a good question, but in essence, um, to get the harmony, you must love yourself. Love yourself. Yes, it's how it is connected. Is it bijection? It is hard. It is one of the questions. Yes, if it is two ways mapping between love of yourself and harmony of all these three together and so on. So methods, I don't know. The method is unknown, but when you know your meaning, your identity, your right way to live, and you follow it, then you achieve the harmony. Yes, and
It kind of suggests that a purity of these things is also important. Like if they're pure, then they can be in harmony. But if they're muddled, then they can be all messed up. Because I guess the presumption is that there could be a disharmony, right? Like harmony is not automatic. There could be disharmony. So maybe that's simply a question like, what would it mean to have disharmony? Where would be the source of that? Uh,
yes.
okay, so I interrupted, but please.
Yeah. So actually this harmony, maybe that's what should we focus about as well, because that dualism can be seen. So we should maybe attack this question from both sides. Yeah. So what does it mean, disharmony? I believe disharmony is when there is a right way to live, but you don't see it, or you don't know it, and you don't follow it. Or you think that you follow something like that, but you don't follow the right way to live. So then meaning and identity will conflict the way you live because it is not the right way to live. Yeah. So if one of them is disrupted, then the whole system is crippled. Yes, you can't achieve the harmony. So maybe understanding them and following them is enough and self-sufficient already. Now, back to the framework, that's keyword. So how should we research? Bottom-up method, actually, it has started from the first day of your life. Yes. You collect everything. You try to understand it, but maybe not always you put everything to the system. So, but systemizing and connecting things and building the structure around them is that bottom-up method, and just analyzing phenomena, analyzing virtual experiments or mind experiments, let's call it. I will talk about it later. Is what is it about? On the other side, there is top-down method, and I think that these methods are not different. They complement each other, and in order to understand how you should approach bottom-up method, you should dig a little bit to top-down method, because you must understand what type of data in which context should you pay attention to. So maybe identify some categories of history, philosophy, identify the ways to test some standardization to bring order to the house in your mind. So that's the top down method. So bottom down up in this context is like trying to control or have this house. Top down is like putting some order to feed that house. One of the ways is to generate some questions, and it is special. When I was writing this section, I was thinking about Montaigne because he likes questions, likes going through questions. So I thought maybe it's a good angle to attack. Yes, to attack these topics. So I'm just thinking about these questions for now and just have some examples. So the question connected to meaning, what I would suffer and would be okay with that, yes? Because it is meaningful. If you suffer, it is meaningful. It's like a way to love yourself, yes? When you suffer for your meaning. It's also a way of love yourself. So you get suffer, but through suffer you experience love for yourself. So flow is a known concept connected to consciousness. When we all know in one or other degree what consciousness is. It's like when you sleep, you are not conscious. Yes, when you think I'm here now, who I am, and so on, you explicitly feel your consciousness. Flow is a state which is somewhere between. It's like reading a book, writing a program, in some trance you do something, so you're not dreaming, but you're not fully conscious. Yes, you're in a state of flow. So that is very connected to that consciousness thing, and consciousness is very connected to our understanding of ourselves. I will skip these ones because time is flowing, and I want to uh, maybe we will continue later. Yes.
Yeah, maybe next time we'll continue more
Yes.
because you've
Yes.
done a lot. Like if you have 2 or 3 more minutes, what would you
Yeah.
want us to think about today?
Yeah. So I will briefly go through what I had here. So one of the ways from this way was developed top down, but it actually brings us bottom up some approach. So we can make some virtual experiments that are mind driven. We can't see them, we can't experience them real life, but we can imagine them. Yeah. So the teleporter is not my thought about. I saw somewhere in Russian YouTube when AI specialists commented about consciousness and something. Maybe I saw different fragments, but I connected them between. So that is an example of that experiment, but we will not discuss it now. I just will leave you to read it because you have this document I sent you. Yes. So here I'm trying to dig into these experiments, into these observations. That duality perspective I actually discussed previously. Yes, 2 times, 2 weeks ago, we discussed that spectator phenomena when while you spectator, everything is clear. All of us are biological robots, and it is the answer to what does it mean that I am one of them is not clear. So, but it is fact, yes. So we collect this fact, we put it on a shelf, and try to move forward. So I'm trying to collect all these facts. It's like a bottom-up approach. Well, I should stop probably here.
Yeah,
Yes.
this
Also,
is yes,
yeah.
Andrej.
Also, I have this ethics and morality. I
Mhm,
actually presented this briefly in my letter, in my email. So,
mhm.
but I will think about it further. But if somebody has to has some thoughts or want to discuss it, we can do it now. Yes, I should
So
stop.
well, first of all, just some applaud for you. Thank you, Andre.
Yeah.
And we will um why don't each of us give our comments and then we'll continue with Jerry. Um, so who'd like to say first? Montijn.
Um, so generally, I think there's a lot of good ideas here, and for me at least, to very appreciate what it is that you're saying. I have to really understand the question you're trying to answer, and also feel like, oh, that's an interesting question to answer. And that's why I also asked, are these methods to love oneself? So then I can ask myself, what does it mean to love myself? And then when this question is clear, I can think, okay, cool. What are your answers? What are your ways to do that? And if this is then a consequence, this the world that's lying behind that. I think it's a very beautiful world to explore. But right now, I feel like I still need to define that urgent question,
Well,
which allows
and
me to
so
appreciate.
his question, as stated, is who am I? You see, who am I? Is that helpful or not? But that's the overall question, and so that's why identity comes as part of it, and that's why meaning of life is part of it, and that's why how to behave
Yeah,
is part of it. So that's all. So those are like natural kind of things that
yeah.
come up, and the harmony between that. That all comes
And,
up from who am I? Does that help?
and yes, and then the first step for me is to really understand that question before I can appreciate the answer. So I
Mhm.
feel like, okay, I would just refer to the physical body or something else. But I think that's where I would
And
take down
so
first.
that's these are two different steps. So I'll give my comment now. Um, what I'm trying to do, and I'll share my screen, let's say, is to get a shared reality with, all of us working together. So if I show what I've done to the Econet website, um, here, you can see I put the Econet alerts on top. And so all of the writings that we've been putting here, and this is really, not that anybody visits this, but just to organize our own thinking, to say, hey, like this is where I can find it quickly, right? Jerry and Steph recommend some books. And then also, like I'm trying to be a little bit more visual. So Montaigne has moral maps. We can just look, wow, like what's that? And I have my investigation that I'm doing in Lithuanian. Okay, so that's for the future. And Jerry, I really loved, maybe he'll talk about this today, this new Ododu explanation. It helped me a lot. But what I wanted to is this shared reality. So what we're talking about, like, and so whether it's frameworks or concepts or methodologies, practices, values, goals, but are we coming up with something that we can kind of agree on that there's something real there? So, for example, to say, okay, Montijn wants us to state the question. So that's one methodology, right? But another step is to say, okay, we start to have a question, but you have all these concepts. What do they mean? How do you figure out what they mean, right? So another methodology is, can be based on trying to work that out. And so one of the things that happens naturally in Andre's case is that his notion split up in different dimensions. So these different dimensions, like identity and meaning of life and behavior, they become very interesting. Are they a complete set? And he talks about that. But like even as he spoke, we talked about disarmament. He said people don't see, or they don't know, or they don't follow. Well, you see, let's say knowing and following and seeing is very much like taking a stand and following through and reflecting. It's also very much like the three things that he talked about. So whether it's iterative, and also this, like he said, it's an iterative process. You see, so this like, hey, like if do we all assume that there can be an iterative process, right? Like, is this a shared reality? So slowly we'll be trying to work on that. That's my goal. That's what I wanted to share.
Okay.
Who's next in commenting?
I would.
Please.
My basic comment is I have a strong emotional identity with what you're talking about, and it ties in with my current focus on trying to get the simplest kind of symbolic framework that we can all use to clarify what this means and how we go. But intuitively, I really agree with what you're trying to say or what you are saying. And the question becomes, how do we make that easier for all of us to understand?
Thank you, Jerry. Steph?
Yeah, Andre, lovely piece. When I read it a few days ago, I had two specific questions that came up. So my comment is a question for you. I'm just curious if you have something you want to say about it. Your paper led me to have a feeling of peace by the end of it. I thought that was your potentially desired outcome for somebody like myself. So I was wondering what it meant for you, or no. My question is, what does it mean for me in your mind that I found peace reading your paper, as opposed to what does it mean for you? Because I want to get to the place where you and I have a connection that I can go around the world with and have a model for.
Yeah, you said keyword peace, and actually I think that peace it can be different. It can be like rest in peace and you don't need anymore, yes, in anything. But it is different, I believe. Yes, it was just a peaceful state when you can focus on things and do not worry too much about problems, but you still know what you want and you move. Yes, I would say it is the answer to your question. What does it mean? I think by reading it and thinking towards it, you actually become one step closer to harmony. So peace and harmony, they are very close to each other, yes? Almost synonyms. So I think that's what what does it mean?
And Steph, you wanted to respond to that?
Yeah, I'll just say that I think you and I, are in harmony if the result of that's what I'll hold, is that I think we're in harmony because I think I got to an answer from your posed essay. So for me, it means that you and I are in sync, and we don't need to necessarily say more about it. It's just like that exists. Now I have a foundation for which I can build from. So who I am, who we are as a culture, at least my relationship to you has gone through a change, or I don't know, a bonding.
Okay. Well,
Uh,
we're grateful for, I'm going to now switch over to Jerry, and I'll
one
ask
small.
Jerry to have, yes, Montijn.
Can I just perhaps a yes or no question of it's the right direction to Andre to understand, perhaps to see if we have also a common understanding? Is it, if I understand your question, in my world would mean, am I spending my lifetime correctly? The time I have my life correctly? Is that the right? Am I going the right direction with my life? Because if I know yes, this is the right direction, I can just go with harmony and peace. Okay, I'm just gonna live my life this way because I know it's the right direction. So you remove that doubt that you're not spending your life, your limited time you have in your life correctly. So we have this need for direction in that sense. Is it similar to that?
Yes, but not only.
I see.
But
Well,
So-
we'll get to that later, yes.
But
Thank
just
you.
to say a very important thing, I think that's a great example, Montijn, of what Andre asked for at the end. He goes, what are questions like that, which would help us investigate inner harmony? And that's, for you personally, it works. So that's your personal intuition. And then is it a shared thing? Then that's something to work for, but could possibly very well.
But
So
now I have a connection here.
So we're all starting. So, ding, ding. So now, Jerry, we'll give you 10 minutes for presentation and then 10 minutes for discussion, and then we'll have 10 minutes left for Steph. And so that's the injustice of the day. Okay, so go on, Jerry.
Okay, let me be fairly brief on this then, because what I'm involved with is going back to the basic symbolic formalism in the simplest way I can represent ideas as possible. And the notion is that it's now involved emotion as a category. So I'm looking at this, emotional intuitive intelligence, and how that can basically explain nature and how everything functions. But I'm looking at three kinds of categories with that. One is just computing, linear thinking, and one is emotion, which is not linear thinking, and it doesn't involve any thought, in the sense that babies basically are almost purely emotional in terms of what they react to, how they develop. And as you grow and you learn language, you start to think and study and practice, then you get to what I was calling intuition, but it's more a broader category than just that. It's creativity, it's imagination, it's the morality, ethics, aesthetics, the kinds of things that we learn through our life, hopefully through study and observation and practice and what have you. So to be able to represent those simply symbolically, and then how we go forward with that, that's where I'm focusing. What it's led to is that this, Montijn, do you have a comment?
Yeah, just so if I follow correctly, is your question, can we use symbols to transfer insights that we live in our life so that it becomes more efficient?
Yeah, no, it's
Okay.
the symbol. Are there very simple symbols that can resonate with deep set beliefs and foundations of reality and all that sort of stuff? That's sort of the goal.
Okay.
What I've been really questioning lately is this my room paper that I wrote, where I was talking about the Necker cube and how you can translate these ideas into that. And I now am questioning why use the Necker cube as opposed to a real cube. What can you show with a Necker cube which doesn't exist? I mean, you can't make a physical thing that looks like a Necker cube. Why use that as opposed to just describing a real cube on that? And that's, I'm kind of working my way through that. It may lead to abandoning that whole approach and just going back to the simplest symbolic formalism, and try to establish very simple symbolic categories that kind of goes back to what I'm calling the cosmic crossword puzzle. If you've got a set of symbols which you say resonates with deep beliefs and observations and what have you, can anybody use that to kind of plug in relative to their experience, their worldview, and what have you, as a way of generating, you know, the what Andreas is calling the shared reality, the understanding in all of us. I think all of us, on an intuitive, emotional level, are very similar in terms of who we are and what we're trying to do. And so then it's how do we continue to explain that? So, okay, that's basically where I am.
Montijn?
So, Jere, would you want the meanings of those symbols that you're using to be fixed so that you say this is what they mean and that's how we can use it, and then that can become a way to transfer insights?
No, what I'm really trying to do is have a set of symbols that I say these are very useful to me, and I think these relate to how I view the universe and how things work. What do these symbols do for you? Do you agree with that? Are they useful in terms of how you understand your thinking and beliefs and functioning?
And this is a chart I made. Well, this is a chart Jerry made, but I just copied and pasted it. But this is a artificial language, Ododu, that he designed 20 years ago. These are the basic archetypal symbols. And maybe to explain it from my point of view, the thing that I really liked was that for the first time, I kind of really understood the distillation of his personal intuition. Okay. And so what he's saying, well, sometimes we're looking at things in terms of what's real, like what I'm calling personal intuition, or just simply direct experience, or things in the world, or whatever that may be. And sometimes it's ideas, like things that could be nonsense or sense, things that are symbolically encoded, let's say. And so the core of the personal intuition, he's saying, is awareness. And then it seems to extend itself. So when you're generally aware, then you could maybe have a focus, desire, or need. And then with regards to, so you're kind of like moving outside of yourself, let's say, and then coming into that relation. So not hooking into a node, but hooking into that arrow, let's say. You can have an evaluation like an emotion or feeling, that's modifying, let's say. And then you can have jump into a different world where it's not about connecting nodes, but it's about connecting edges. So like one emotion with another emotion, let's say, right? So these are like intuitions or beliefs. So that's one way to extend yourself. And he's saying that if you're going to create a language, that's where like the distinction between nouns and verbs and modifiers and relationals, that's where this would be very helpful, relevant. But you also want another part of the language to say, okay, there's a whole symbolic world where things are already symbolized. So here are things that are not symbolized. They stand on their own in the real world, but you would maybe want to, relate them to symbols, reference them with symbols, and the symbols would have these features. But then you may have these ideas. So like, although a physical body he's kind of saying it's really like the idea of a physical body. You can have idea of different things in different locations, like in geometry. This is at least my understanding. And then those points or bodies, they can move and interact, and they can maybe sense or represent. So they're extending further. And then that can be creative or integrative, let's say, overall. So the idea is that this is another way, starting from something like, you know, a boundary, let's say, you can cross the boundary and you can get more complicated. So then you have an idea, you have a notion of communication, of symbolic representation, and in these, you know, wonderful languages. But this is all happening on what I would say like the level of the second mind, the questioning mind, you know, the mind that does not know. This is all from the mind that knows directly. So, and then finally, what he, I think, became interested because he really wanted to apply this practically. He said, well, let's just take this as a given, and let's say this is just an approximate language, but let's draw these diagrams. So, in terms of his elder and colleague, John Ray Hammond, I think it was, he drew this relational symmetry paradigm. And so it has this kind of form of the different kinds of, they call them symmetries or I guess invariances or whatever, but or structures, let's say. And then this is related to the laws of form, which is by Gordon Spencer Brown, I think, and so he talked about distinctions and how they form regions, and let's say you can cross that region and etc. So, and then what? Just it's a very aesthetic, practical thing, but he said, well, why don't we just use Roman letters based on shape, more or less, to kind of relate to these things, and then we can start to have a quote unquote symbolic language that we could actually try to be communicating with. And then the idea would be like to have this cosmic crossword puzzle where you could start to plug in whatever you want. So maybe you have scrambled eggs or you know, orange juice. Like how would it all, you know, like breakfast time, how would it all fit into this whole thing? So that's my crude introduction. But the thing, just to maybe complete my explanation, is to say, Jerry's focused an enormous amount on the mathematics that could result from this. But for me, really the place to start are these distinctions he's making intuitively. So like, is there a difference between reals and ideals? Is this kind of fourfold extension something that we can make sense naturally? Are these things like, you know, what do we mean? Like Montijn would ask, what do we mean by all these things? So to spend a lot of energy on that intuition and then worry about like, well, what's the mathematical form? Jerry, have I done what would you correct in my exposition?
No, that's basically it. The physical body really is the boundary question. What separates me from the rest of the universe? That kind of stuff and how it goes back and forth. But yeah, that's what we're wrestling with here. So
and so in terms of shared reality, like thanks for correcting me on that. This is very much like the active inference type of world, like to say, okay, well, there's a system and it has an environment and there's a boundary, right? And then it can go back and forth and it can have, you know, it can represent that, you know, like sense and represent. So in active interest, they would say, well, there's perception and action, right? So action says something happened, I'm going to represent it. And sense means, you know, something touched me, I feel it or whatever. So anyways, but you can kind of see like what this is saying, well, active inference is actually a mental representation of, but it's not really about reality. It's about the ideal. Reality is really about awareness and desires and emotions, intuitions, and this can get lost in active inference, just as an example.
Generally, I do think there's a good. I think I understand the difference between ideas and reals is that one refers to the state of the world, the nature, and what the story is that unfolds there, if I am correct, and the other one refers to our conscious experience, and that we should, each of the other terms is personal experience, they refer to our conscious experience. So in that sense, you know, I think we can refer to these both things, and I think that it indeed justifies that separation that you have. So I think at least on that I follow you.
Andrej, Steph?
Well, just one last comment. Thanks. This is very helpful in terms of the way I'm moving now and how that seems to be being received. So that's good.
It's like notation. The purpose of it is to introduce meaningful, intuitive notations for formulas and for diagrams. So if I'm correct, that's the main purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think there's a deeper purpose, and I think the deeper purpose is to say, see, a lot of times in physics, let's say, a lot of this gets overemphasized. It gets like a lot more. It's like 99% of the attention is all this world here because this is something you can often see outside of yourself and measure mathematically and etc. Right? Whereas this doesn't just gets ignored. It gets to say, well, that's, feminine or intuitive or whatever it is, right? So this whole inner world, which is actually, I think, primary, let's say, right? Like the things we actually experiencing, it doesn't get expressed, and so it just gets lost. And so if we can focus on what we really want to be talking about, then we can make sure that we have a language that is talking about it. But we have to really put the attention on what do we really want to be talking about. Otherwise, we just end up back where we were with a bunch of symbols. And one thing that Jerry struck me, like he said, because it's a little bit of a dangerous goal. He wants to be able to plug in, which is kind of like going back to that linear, So I think that's a very important intuition to kind of going in. There's this computing type of linear thinking, like follow step by step. There's a kind of like emotional thinking, and then there's like some kind of creative, intuitive thinking. But the idea to say, okay, I want to have a language like here, so that then I could plug in, let's say, the intuition. And so then you kind of going back to the linear thinking, you see, and you're trying to generate creativity out of linear thinking, which is maybe interesting, but the whole thing's like, what are we doing? Is that can possibly work, right? Like, you're going to get creativity from linear thinking, right? By plugging in. Steph, what are you thinking about?
I'm thinking about a somewhat of a reduction in complex language to something simple and then generating complexity back up from there. But then we are translating and interpreting in several different people's languages to make sense of why we did the original reduction in the first place. And I'm confused.
I must say, I'm getting hopeful. Like I feel like I understand. I think Andrew, how that connects to my work. I feel like I understand Jerry, what you are pointing at. I do think there's a beautiful simplification to be made, but I will try to work on that next meeting. For me, I think it's time for you. We can also go down to Steph because I think you already introduced complexity, and then we can end the meeting with that if that's okay.
I'll just add one thing here about holistic. See, the ambitious part of what Jerry's doing is that it's holistic. He's saying like these are the 8 things that are, really we need to be keeping in mind, which is probably a good number of things. Like so, whereas Andre is focusing on different things, in certain sense, it's also holistic, that triad. So how do we, anyway, so it makes it challenging though to try to deal with this holistically. Yes, please, Steph.
Okay. I wanted to share something about my work, which is, I don't know how to briefly introduce a hash function, but it's a core ingredient in any blockchain. And it's basically a way to turn any input into a random output so that one can never walk from the output back to the input without having that input, which is a way of encrypting the information in order to put it behind a wall of energy. So the only way to run the information backwards would take some sort of large amount of computational effort, which is work, which is energy, or you're following the rules of the system. So it makes sure that you are an honest participant of the system. And what I have on screen here is a way of showing how that's used practically. So we're in a Wolfram language, which is a symbolic computational language. So these are like reduced statements of logic. And we have these symbols. This is called it is a blockchain block data symbol, which has a lot of logic going on behind it. But it's getting the last Bitcoin block. And this is just saying, go to the Bitcoin block. And I've already put out the answers. And what we want to look at is this hash. This is the thing that references the last block in the chain. And so anybody with this hash can go to the information that is contained within it, which is things like the transaction list, which are also hashes, which contain the inputs, the outputs, and the sender and receiver of those transactions. And then it has a bunch of other metadata, like when it was produced and the amount. But we're only focusing on this block hash here. And one more important thing.
This is like the key to unlock the data. Is that the way to think of it, or not?
This is the key to unlock the data, which has provably committed work to demonstrating that. So one thing I forgot to say is this hash is significant because of these sequence of zeros in the beginning of it.
Which is very unusual to get all those zeros. It's very special.
It's special. And the frequency that we should expect to get that many leading zeros gives this system a sense of time. It says, on average, we should expect this many leading zeros about every 10 minutes based on the amount of work that's being done on this system.
Mm-hmm. And so this is in the context of a particular algorithm that's generating these, right? So which is the SHA-256? Like
this is
you have to have that assumption, like that in that world, right? Like, in that context, then okay.
There are many hashing algorithms. SHA secure hash algorithm with 256-bit digest is the one that we're looking at right here. But all of the hash algorithms can do this randomness function in order to encrypt data. So we could look at different hashing algorithms, but we're going to focus on SHA-256 because it's the one that Bitcoin uses.
Just to use hashing to encrypt data, so the point is that you also can decrypt it again?
Yes. Well, you can validate that you have the right information. So if I send Jerry a message, and that message contains arbitrary data, it could include Jerry's intuitive language, or it could include money or
something sensitive,
a data packet. And when I hash that, I can send the hash across an open channel. Nothing can really happen to it unless I also send the
key,
other pieces of information, and Jerry's private key would unlock that information. And he would be able to validate that I had the key that said I could send it, and that he can verify it and validate it. And then he can publish that hash and say, anybody with this information, it went from me to Jerry in this size, go ahead and validate it. And it's easy to validate when you have all of that information. But on the ledger, it's unchangeable because we just kind of like dropped that hash in there without the other context.
So it's like the beauty of hash that you can use public channels to send private information.
Yeah, you're doing a couple things. I'm oversimplifying what's happening here because I kind of just want to look at
Uh,
what is the reason why we can use a random output in order to facilitate consensus.
Consensus or communication?
Ultimately, consensus. We want to facilitate a rule where everybody can agree that participants acted honestly, and therefore we can update from one state to the next.
I want to zoom in on more on this. Can you I don't understand this fully, but I want to understand.
You have about a few
We're not
minutes.
starting in the right place to go.
Okay.
That's fine.
But
Steph, you have
yeah.
like 3 minutes. What would you like to tell us before, just in summary, or like what's the philosophical side of this that you want us to start to think about?
The philosophical takeaway is the rule that says the number of leading zeros past some threshold. So that we can implement this arbitrary rule that says a hash with 20 leading zeros is going to be valid and one with 19 is not valid. It's like a very simple arbitrary rule, but it's what facilitates the ability for any peer in the network to say the rules of the system were met, and therefore I agree that everything is working right and okay, and I accept the current state of the system, and let's go to the next state of system, and then we try again for those leading zeros. And it's interesting to me because it's asking those peers in the network to commit work to reach consensus, and that we can measure that work precisely in order to say this much energy was used to reach consensus.
So already based on what you're saying, like I think it is very informative on this notion of shared reality that I'm trying to say. So like in physics, for example, shared reality might be, I think, like 6 sigma or something like. So if you're in a particle accelerator lab, and you want to say that this isn't just a chance thing, but we need to have 6 sigma, and 4 sigma is not enough, and 5 sigma is kind of iffy. You see, so 6 sigma. So the same thing, like in our little group, like what does it take for us to say, well, reals versus ideals is something that's part of our shared reality or not? Like, and so, what would it take for Montijn to say this is well defined, or Andrej to say, or Steph, that this all matches up? So we have to come up with our own kind of like test. And one of the things I think that you're pointing out is that like 19 is not good enough, right? Like if you can't get 20, it's not like say, yeah, but that was a really cool number. Yeah, it had like 3 sevens, or it had like, like a 6 5, it had a 6 7 in it. Like, no, 19 is never going to be 20. You got to get 20, right? So
yeah, and actually
that's very curious.
That's a good point, and it actually points out a flaw in the first proof of work systems, which is like 19 is still significant to some degree. Can you use that for some reason, or do you just discard it? And the modern state-of-the-art systems would say, use 19, but make sure that that rule is still sub 20 leading zeros, and that the system is making that consensus less than the one that is producing more work.
Or like in psychology, they'll have confidence levels, like, it's 5%.
Exactly.
Or whatever. Like, so, but it could be 6% maybe sometimes. But yeah. So
yeah.
Okay, closing. Oh, so who can volunteer prayer for us today? Maybe that's but just before somebody does, I just want to say Montijn and I will meet. I'll meet with all of you, and we'll decide how to continue further. We'll jumble our order. Maybe Montijn will present something, but do we have a round of applause for our presenters that this was a good day? Is that okay? Okay, we're all happy. Who's going to pray or last comments?
Thank you, Steph. I will have to do a bit more homework to understand the context. I haven't been able to do so because I'm studying, but I will try to catch up next time. And
I want to ask Andrej for his inner harmony, peace to descend upon us with a prayer. He got
I
us
actually
there.
have a lot of thoughts, but we don't have time, perhaps. So, Steph mentioned that terminology, wall of energy. Yes. So, in some sense, finding some keys and validating it. So, first of all, you need a method to validate. Yes, as we discussed right now. And as long as we have, then either we have harmony or not. Yes, it's like some test. But actually, you can't dream these keys. And in Bitcoins, there is a big problem of people losing millions of money. They're lost to nowhere because of lost keys. Yes, so actually, and when we are born without keys initially. Yes, and we need to find them. So we need to break that wall of energy. We must go through it, and we must have the correct tests to actually to say if we have broken in the correct direction or not.
So that was a prayer, I think.
So the
But
prayer,
encoded, you have to have the key. If you
I,
have the
I
key.
pray for us. So let's keep breaking the walls of energy.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
bye bye. Okay.